The command room air turned thin. The second General Korth's scaled face materialized on the main glass. An armada had just ripped out of hyperspace, blotting out Illyria's twin suns. The ultimatum was broadcast on all frequencies: total planetary surrender or ash. Queen Solara gripped the edge of the holotable, her knuckles going white. Beside her stood Leo, her husband of exactly 3 weeks. A Terran captain from a mud-spin world the rest of the galaxy treated like a joke. He didn't panic. He just reached out, his thumb pressing a warm, steady rhythm against her freezing skin. When an unstoppable armada comes to burn a planet, the quietest diplomat in the room initiates a terrifying tactical protocol. Truth is, the lie began long before the fleet arrived. It turned out Illyria was out of options. The Dracon hegemony was expanding, swallowing star systems whole. Solara needed numbers, and a desperate royal union with a primitive species conceals a weaponized secret that will shatter the galactic balance. She just didn't know it yet. She only agreed to the arranged marriage to make the Dracons hesitate. Then Leo Mercer arrived. He was quiet, too quiet. During their heavily publicized wedding ceremony, while the high priests wrapped their wrists in ceremonial silver, Solara felt his pulse. It was slow, measured. His eyes didn't widen at the towering crystal spires of the capital. Instead, he watched the orbital defense cannons. He tracked the patrol routes. He was calculating, and he was always working. When the first Dracon probing attacks hit the outer mining colonies, Solara spent her nights pacing the cold marble floors, sick with worry. Leo would sit nearby, a heavy silence between them. He offered her a cup of warm tea, his fingers brushing hers. Ironically, those quiet hours were the closest they ever got to the truth. She would catch him staring at her, not with the awe of a lesser species, but with a heavy, unspoken burden. The pull between them was undeniable, a friction built on things left unsaid. She didn't understand why her chest tightened when he left a room, or why the faint smell of machine oil on his uniform made her feel entirely safe. She didn't know he was running an aggressive surveillance cover. While she slept, Leo slipped into the lower network hubs, the taste of recycled air sharp in his throat. He bypassed the Illyrian security grids without leaving a fingerprint. He analyzed the structural math of their planetary shield technology, hunting for the exact frequency where it would fail. It wasn't malice, it was espionage. He compiled the raw data, layered it under the ambient noise of a commercial freighter log, and transmitted the heavily encrypted intelligence directly back to Terra. An embedded operative must burn his decades-long cover to save the monarch he was assigned to infiltrate. He just never planned on falling for her in the process, but time ran out. The proximity klaxons screamed. The Dracon fleet didn't just threaten the border, they jumped straight to the capital. Korth's ultimatum echoed through the war room. The Illyrian High Council reviewed the tactical telemetry. Defeat was a mathematical certainty. The shield would buckle under a concentrated gravitational pulse within hours. Solara closed her eyes. The sting of tears threatened, but a queen could not weep. She opened her mouth to order the surrender protocols, to save millions by enslaving them. Leo stepped in front of her. He didn't ask the council. He didn't defer to the generals. He looked down at Solara, the space between them suddenly crackling with an electric heat. "Give me 12 hours, he said, his voice dropping its soft diplomatic lilt. It was the hard, flat tone of a soldier. The council erupted in outrage, but Leo never broke eye contact with her. He turned to the secured command terminal, his hands flying across the glass interface faster than any human should be able to move. The encryption keys he entered were entirely alien to the Illyrian mainframe. He was locking onto a top-tier Terran emergency frequency. He was bringing the storm. The 12 hours bled away, heavy and thick. Solara stood frozen, watching the man she thought she knew. Leo didn't pace. He didn't sweat. He just stood by the terminal, a quiet anchor in a room drowning in panic. Then the orbital sensor grid screamed. It wasn't a breach. It was a tear. Space folded outward, and the main glass filled with the blinding flash of hyperdrives. Hundreds of them. The ships that materialized weren't the fragile freighters the galaxy expected from Terra. They were sleek, impossible leviathans of black metal and starlight, dwarfing the Dracon armada. They moved with terrifying precision, instantly boxing in General Court's fleet. Solara's breath hitched. She looked at Leo. He touched his collar, activating a secure channel. When he spoke, the mild diplomat was entirely gone. "Admiral Mercer, you're late." A woman with Leo's dark, focused eyes appeared on the main screen. She wore the sharp, immaculate uniform of a Terran commander. "Traffic in the Outer Rim, Colonel. Awaiting your mark, Colonel." The word hit Solara physically. She took a step back, the marble floor cold beneath her boots. Leo finally turned to the Illyrian Council. "General Korth," he said, his voice carrying across the open frequency. "This system is under the protection of the Terran Alliance. Power down, or we will drop you in the dark." Korth sneered, but before the Dracon commander could order a counterattack, Leo nodded. The Terran dreadnoughts didn't fire plasma or lasers. They fired localized gravitational pulses. The impact was entirely silent. On the tactical glass, a third of the Dracon ships simply went dark. Engines died. Weapon systems flatlined. It was a surgical, terrifying display of power. The strategic weaponization of a perceived weakness finally laid bare. Korth broke. The remaining Dracon ships scrambled, tearing back into hyperspace like frightened animals. The war room erupted in cheers, but Leo just stood there, his shoulders finally dropping. He didn't look at the screen. He looked at Solara. The space between them had never felt wider. Later, when the council chambers were empty, the silence returned. Leo stood by the grand windows, the artificial light casting long angles across his jaw. "We were watching everyone," he confessed, his voice rough. He didn't try to hide behind protocol anymore. He laid out the truth of Terra's deep surveillance program. "We had to know who was safe before we showed our hand. I was sent here to assess your defenses, to see if Illyria was worth saving." Solara felt the sting in her throat. "And the marriage? A mission parameter." Leo finally turned to her, his chest rising with a heavy breath. "Until it wasn't. Truth is, I broke every regulation I have today. I blew a decade of cover because I couldn't let you burn." He stepped closer, stopping just short of touching her. The friction between his military duty and his emergent morality had cost him everything. "I'll nullify the treaty, the marriage. You can walk away, Solara. I'll make sure Terra protects you regardless." She looked at the man who had lied to her since the day they met, but who had just risked a galactic war to keep her breathing. Authentic alliances are born from the ashes of systemic deception. She reached out, her fingers finding the sleeve of his uniform, sliding down to grip his bare hand. His skin was warm. "No," she said softly. "We stay. We rebuild." Weeks later, the air on the royal balcony felt different. The galaxy was scrambling. Every species that had laughed at humanity was suddenly begging for a mutual defense treaty. Leo stood beside her, their shoulders brushing as they watched Illyrian and Terran fighters run joint patrols through the pink twilight. The comms on his wrist chimed a secure text from Earth High Command. They were offering him a newly minted seat on the Galactic Council. He glanced at the message, then up at the darkening sky, his hand finding hers in the space between them. "What did they say?" she asked, leaning into his warmth. Leo smiled, the quiet diplomat returning, but this time he wasn't pretending. "They want to know if we're ready to change the galaxy."